emphasis is being put on brand purpose, and in which there is a greater demand for women leadership, how can brands and the media effectively contribute to the larger global conversation around women empowerment? It's a big question, and one that I know follows on from the conversations that we were having yesterday. And the whole idea is to create powerful positions for women, put women in leadership positions. We know we're capable of it. We're tired of speaking about it, but there is always this underlying message that's being conveyed. Is it in the media? It doesn't matter. You're driving on highways, you see billboards, you switch on the TV, you see women. But are we being portrayed in the right way to ensure empowerment and to ensure those leadership positions? Well, that's the kind of conversation we're going to be having now, and I'm really looking forward to it with my two guests, and somebody who I really love dearly, and I'm so glad she's sitting in the studio with me to calm the fires at the fireside chat, because that's what this is called, a beautiful fireside chat. I've got Devi Sankari-Govender. So nice to have you here.
And how nice to be together like this.
Yes.
And not constantly saying, I'm going to call you, we're going to do lunch.
No, exactly, and touching each other. We can do that. We can high-five each other.
Totally.
I know, it's so nice. Forgive us, okay? We stupid like that. Anyway, somebody who we can't high-five, who's also with us here, is Ile Potgieter. She's the managing director at MNC Saatchi Abel. Listen, Ile, I'm sure you are upset you're not here in studio with us today.
Yes, I am. Sorry I can't be there, but at least
we've got
thanks for
snacks and
technology, I
everything.
can still join this important chat. So
well, listen,
that's great.
I have to let out some secrets here, because we've had to turn our whole set around, literally, and make a new set, because you talk about technology, and you know the whole issue of green screens and sets and building them. Well, apparently my yellow dress is not yellow, it's green.
But where I'm sitting, it's yellow.
It's yellow, but on the screen it's green. So all these things are going wrong. So check this out. We've made a plan so we can have this conversation. Anyway, it's so
Beautiful.
good to... Yeah, it looks nice, hey? Does it look good? We can't see it, but we feel good. So this is the conversation I want to talk about today, is how women are portrayed in the media and how this lends itself or detracts itself from women in leadership positions and women empowerment. Ile, let me start with you. I'm going to throw this to you, and then we'll come back to us to try and pick it up and see what Devi's views are on this. So you begin. Start us off on the conversation.
Yes, I think, as a woman in leadership, I think we've all faced many challenges. I think I've probably faced similar challenges in my career to many other women, where oftentimes we have had to work a little bit harder for our potential to be recognized. But I think in saying that, it's been really rewarding for me to work through those challenges, and I think to come out stronger on the other side and be a better leader. If I just speak about, obviously, I'm in the advertising industry, and I think the ad industry has come a long way from if I think back to the Mad Men-esque days and the narrative around that, I think that's absolutely changed a lot. I think, I'm seeing what's exciting for me just around the women empowerment narrative. I'm seeing it. There's a lot more female-led agencies now. There's a lot more female-led brands, a lot more female-led my clients. And I think that's so motivating to see, and something, we need to do more of. I think just talking about the challenges that I've had to face as a woman in leadership, and I specifically when I became more of a leader, is just to lead more from a place of authenticity. I think to not try and lead as the person before you, and to unequivocally be yourself, because at the end of the day, you can only be a good leader if you are yourself. So I think that's just touching a little bit on, the challenges that I've faced in my career to get here. But it's equally been rewarding and filled with so much growth.
I can't hear.
I think your challenges are nothing that are foreign to anybody. And it's something I think that all of us in our industries, respective industries, go through. And that's something that I think we all need to look at. And I'm going to bring Devi into the conversation. And Devi, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a paraphrase of what Ile was saying, because I know you couldn't hear her. But, she comes from an ad agency perspective, and and that is a big one, because I know that's going to steal a little bit of time as well, is how the advertising agency use women, and how is it getting better, isn't it getting better? So we're going to speak about that, but also just the challenges and women having to hop, skip and jump a lot more than men do in order to get to positions. Let's
And in
talk-
all industries.
That's what the idea is. It seems that this is a common message. Let's talk media, though, because both of us are working in the media sector. So how is it for you? Where do you come from in this perspective?
Look, in terms of my own story, I sound husky like this, guys, because I lost my voice, and I'm so happy it's back.
But it does sound sexy.
It,
so don't
yeah,
worry.
but
You've got that
somebody
sexy
said
thing
that
going.
to me the other day, and I was like, whoa, that's not where I'm attempting to go at all. But here's the thing with the media. When I started 29 years ago, the idea, Jan, is that if you joined television, you were going to be the poppy.
Yeah.
The chick with the makeup and the hair, and no one really expected anything clever to come out of our mouths. That's what it was, right? It was continuity presenting, and they put us in that box. And if you look at the people that were perhaps leading shows, current affairs shows, they were mostly guys 20, 30 years ago. And then I started to see, hang on a minute, I need to start playing a role that was strong, which is exactly what I am. And I noticed that it was a big switch up at the time because you were seen as not having gravitas, guys. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
You didn't have gravitas if you weren't a guy sitting there in a suit and a tie. And I think my coping mechanism, because I heard a lot of criticism, and I'm short, guys, so I've also got that problem. I'm 1.5 meters tall. So, and that's it, on a good day. And I kept saying to myself, I need to do what I need to do in my way and just do it. And people need to dial in. Executive producers need to dial in. People in television just simply need to dial in.
Yeah.
So it's easy to look at people like you and I now and say, wow, you guys are so strong. Well, it didn't actually start off like this.
No.
You weren't given those steps. And my realization, I know yours too, was we're just going to take the steps then, guys. We're going to take it.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it our way.
Yeah. And, you touch on such an important aspect because it is like that. And, Ilya, I don't think it's any different in your industry. And Devi and I are coming from both the media side of things. And, it was. I remember that you would tune into any program, and this is what happens in front of us on a TV screen. But it's still happening in boardrooms, and it's still happening at CEO levels and all of that stuff. But we're talking just on a television program. And if you needed, the trust, the respect, and you needed that authoritative voice, it was a man.
Gravitas.
It was a man, and you would tune in and you would see this man in a suit and looked like it had been mothballed for years, and the gray hair and whatever. But God forbid you put a woman in that position who had that strength, because then they're being cheeky, or they are asking those questions, because then it's like you're being chatarach and you're
Was smart.
Yeah, a little bit smart.
Too smart.
It didn't work as nicely as it did with a man. We trying to ease it and change things. On your side, what is it like? I mean, is that perception still there, or has it changed a bit?
I think the good thing is it definitely has starting to change. I think we need a lot more of that change. But I think, you touched on just the importance, obviously, in my industry of brands and the advertising we put out there and how we depict women. And I think, what we are seeing, that needs to change at a boardroom level, and it is changing at a boardroom level. So I think of the clients that I work with who are in charge of these brands and brand custodians, more and more of them are now female. And I think that's super exciting. If you sit around a boardroom table, you discuss how are we going to put advertising out there? How are we going to affect behavior? Because we know with the media we can affect behavior. And to have that conversation with a strong, diverse group of women, I think is really exciting. So yes, I think it absolutely is starting to shift. But the thing is, we need a lot more of that. I think it needs to keep going, and it needs to happen a lot more.
Well, I mean, it certainly is happening a lot faster here in South Africa than it does elsewhere on the continent. I mean, we have to give credit where credit is due when we talk to the South African landscape.
True.
I mean, when you look around and you look at different broadcasters, on the continent and advertising on the continent, South Africa does seem to be a lot more progressive. We've got to say that.
Yeah.
What do you think, from your view, from seeing what you see and feel what you feel?
There's definitely been a shift. So in the past, you would see adverts where women would be typecast as mom, nurturer, the person buying the vegetables, the person doing the mommy things. Yeah. That's all started to change. And I'm thinking about a couple of adverts that I can refer to. The one example for me was the First for Women and the Fearless advert.
Yes,
That
yes.
for me was, here's a company that's addressing my concerns as a woman who goes to work, drives alone at night.
Yeah.
How often do we do this?
Yeah.
And yes, you could argue, well, they were playing in on an insecurity. Well, the fact is, it's not an insecurity, it's facts. Women driving on their own, it's not a safe thing to do, but it's what we have to do if we're going to land food on the table for our families. And they played into that, but they came with that, I'm fearless, which made me feel, well, that's kind of wowzers. That's changing the stereotype on its head. And there was another advert, I actually wrote the notes down, a Vicks advert that I saw, where it's the dad at home taking care of the kid who needs the Vicks. And FaceTiming the mom, who's a medical professional at work. I thought, now you're talking.
Yeah.
Now you're talking. It's about
If I
changing
can-
the stereotypes.
Yeah, please, Ile, go for it.
Yes. Yes, I think if I can build on that, what Devi is saying, absolutely. But again, we do need to see more of that. Like those ads are a couple of ones that stands out, but specifically when we look at working moms, and it is very hard to be a working mom. And I think as Devi is saying, the role has changed. It's now a lot more equal shared responsibility when it comes to parenting between a mom and a dad. And so let's not only show the mom buying the groceries, the mom picking up the child, let's show the mom and the dad. And I was recently having a conversation with one of my colleagues who is also a working dad, who was saying, why don't we have more changing tables in men's bathrooms? It sounds like a trivial small thing, but those are significant changes that we can do to really help the women empowerment, women narrative forward. And I think, we need to focus more on those kind of things. Also, just to touch on the ads, obviously when Debbie's talking about ads, I need to talk about ads as well, because I think that's the thing I'm so passionate about. Calling out some brands that's absolutely starting to shift and change and break stereotypes. I think what's exciting is we're seeing this from companies like beer brands. If I look at a brand like Carling Black Label, they are taking on gender-based violence in a very direct way with their No Excuses campaign. And what's exciting for us to see is they're doing it in an ongoing way. It's not a once-off campaign. And similarly, another iconic beer brand like Heineken, they're also directly challenging the stereotype that female don't drink beer. Of course they can drink beer. So I think, those campaigns that's starting to change the status quo and challenge it is great. But again, we need a lot more of that.
Yeah, we do, and I mean these are perspectives that are great, that are needed to change. Is that you do need to have women in these powerful positions as the leader, as the CEO, as the woman who does go out with her friends. It's not just about the man, and it's not also taking away from the woman. There was an interesting discussion that I was involved in again in this, and it's just those little subtleties. There's this. I'm going to steal it from a friend of mine. I was doing a few sessions with her, and she was it's Simone Musgrave. She does all the gins and whatever else, and she was relaying a story when she was playing padel. So I've also started. Have you played padel yet?
No.
You haven't done it yet. It's this new padel. I don't know. Have you done it, Ile? Have you done it yet?
No, but I heard it's great.
No, it's great. It is great. But get this, here's this. So when you go and you get the rackets, okay, so that you get these fancy paddle rackets, but there's a men's one and a woman's one. And the men's one, listen to this, is about maybe 20 grams or 10 grams heavier than the woman's one. But that's only for men, because the woman must use the lighter one. Now, why? Can I ask you why? Now, I'm not saying that I'm not fighting for, standing for equality, but I want the same weight racket. But, when you have such a subtle difference.
Give me a choice.
But it's not even that. It's that subtle difference that automatically says, this is for the men because they are stronger, they can deal with it more, but 10 grams less, you can have that one. That's the woman's one. So it's such a subtle thing. And yet, when you look closer, it's unacceptable. It's unnecessary. Why must it be that way? Little messaging like that we want to grow up, and I want our children to grow up in a world where, my gosh, 10 grams, does it really make a difference at the end of the day? No, it doesn't. And why do we have to highlight that? We need to automatically say, well, if you can do it, I can do it, and it's fine.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt, because look, let's just lay it out there. You know I like chasing crooks.
It's what you do.
It's what I do, and I
Yeah.
love it.
And you're
So
good
don't
at
feel
it.
sorry for me, because I get a lot of people saying, oh, shame, David, such a tough job. Yes, it's tough, but I love doing it. And I love doing it in a dress and a pair of heels.
Exactly.
Because I'm still a lady doing what is considered a really rough, not even rough, Leanne, rough,
Yeah.
a real
I'm with
rough
you.
job, but it can be done. And not can be done, I've been doing it for 29 years.
It's being done.
Again, saying to people, you can be anything you want to be. And we're constantly telling our young girls this. You can be anything you want to be. And it's the subtle messages that they see that actually tells them that you can't. And the other thing that I've done from a media point of view to try and change this kind of stereotype is on the Devi show, we're landing amazing women. And I'm telling you now, I've got a female bias. I don't care if you've got a problem with that. If you're a strong woman doing amazing things, I mean, I spoke to a woman who's running Kosi Ceramics.
Yeah.
She started during COVID. She's somebody who's also in the building trade. She had this little, you know, those little plasticine sets that you get for new babies.
Yeah.
She started with it. She's running a thriving business in 4 ways, doing amazing ceramics our way.
Yeah.
So part of the empowerment for me on television has to be about the bucks. Because empowerment is about getting women to earn their own money. And a lot of women are probably online now, are earning their own money, but we've got to find a way in which we can pass it forward. So for me, it's about getting other women who are watching my show, who may feel, I don't have a job, the barriers to entry will include the fact that X is expensive and I can't, is we got to get women to start thinking out of the box.
Yeah.
Because guess what? There ain't no box. There never was one. Someone told us once there was a box, and it was this invisible box. So that's kind of like what I'm doing from my side to change the way other women see women.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us would be empowered here already in the setup, right? To a large extent.
To a large extent. That's what I say. One
To a
would
large
think.
extent.
One would think.
We need to push it forward now.
Eli, you want to speak?
Yes. Yes, I think if I can add to that around exactly your point of doing women, let's do who we are. Let's not try and be someone else. Let's push into that. And I think, you know, when we talk about female leadership as well and needing more of that in South Africa, I think just to give a little bit of context around the world we're coming out of, you know, the truth of it is we are coming out of trauma, big trauma from the pandemic. And I think what is needed right now in leadership as a whole is to lead with empathy. And I do believe that women are able to lead with empathy better than men, because I think we're able to remove the ego from the equation. And what that does is actually we're able to see different points of view and are able to have a more free conversation with people. And I think we're seeing that just, you know, from women in corporate jobs, is that if you're not leading with that empathy and you're not having those discussions, people leave, not just our industry, any industry, they leave, and a lot of them are women and working moms. And to me, that is a massive waste of potential and talent and something we cannot let happen. So I think as females, let's push into the fact that we lead with empathy, and let's own that, because I think that is what the world needs more of right now.
Yeah, it does. And it needs women to occupy these positions, powerful positions in powerful jobs. And I want to, do you know the Vogue editor's name? British Vogue editor.
That chick with the dark glasses and the
guy.
The guy. Okay.
Hold on. I'm Googling it. My favorite friend in the world, because I listened to this interview, and you just reminded me of something. Edward Enninful. Okay. Edward Enninful is the editor of the British Vogue magazine, and he started there in, I think it was 2018, 2017, the least likely guy to get the job. And he got it. Why? Because he was a black male moving into a position of Vogue editor in the UK, where I don't think they had very many black faces on the cover of the magazine, if ever. And ever since then, he's changed it. But he got in from a very different perspective. I mean, he comes from a village in Ghana. He's got an amazing background. He is gay. He is a black man, very proud of it. And in fact, he has a problem with eyesight. Would you believe it? That you got to. I'm going to send you this interview. You got to listen to it. But it really opened my eyes. And what he was saying was that they took a chance on him and put him in this leadership position. And when he was in this leadership position, he made the change. because he was there to make the decisions. So it's wonderful if, and I come to the advertising industry here, because I still believe that the advertising industry is dominated by white men. Because when I look at adverts and I see things, I still believe that that is who's making the ultimate decision. You may have a boardroom table full of different creative minds, but ultimately there's that decision maker. And I think that decision maker may be that perception I have. But I'm going to ask you if I've got this wrong. But he says, and I quote him to say this, in order to make change, you've got to make change from the inside out. It's nice to talk about it. It is wonderful to talk about making change. We can sit here and talk about change. I don't run the SABC. You don't run E-News. That's where you broadcast. So I try in my way to make change. I do. But ultimately, there's somebody above me that is actually pulling the strings. What about in your industry? I mean, when I go and I buy stockings, and I know you'll go through the same thing, and when you go to a shop, and Eli, this is for you, when you say that I'm going to get a barely there color, or the nude color.
Yes.
Whose nude is that?
It's not always my nude, I can
not
tell
my
you.
nude. My nude is much darker than that. Now, for the majority of the population, that isn't the nude, but it's still there, and it's still advertised as barely there or nude.
True.
Why? These things are going to change. They're so subtle, but they have to change. So I think what I'm addressing here is change from the inside for a women's perspective and for an empowerment perspective. We need that as well. So do you want to take that one? I know I've asked you a lot and said a lot in this question,
Yes.
but advertising is a big one.
Yes, I think just to touch on a little bit what you said at the end, I think, representation is so incredibly important. And I think, brands need to be they have to be brave, but they have to authentically be themselves, and they have to be careful not to be tone deaf at all. I think that is a very, very big watch out. We've all seen the campaigns that's been called out that, that did the opposite around, women empowerment. I think of a tech appliance brand where, they've showed all the men on devices like cell phones and laptops, but yet the female was shown next to the washing machine. I think that's not helpful for the women empowerment narrative at all. And we cannot let those mistakes happen anymore. I think just to touch on a little bit around, I guess, the perception in the advertising industry that decisions are still being made by white men. I think that's a perception we have to.
Oh, such an important point. Looks like it looks like Eli's frozen there.
That's the cliffhanger.
To change.
Whoa, stop, pause, wait, start again.
Am I back?
You've just come back. You got to
Am I back?
reverse. You left us on a cliffhanger there. Okay, we got you back. What were you saying about that perception, white man making decisions? Yeah, go for it.
I think it is a perception that has to be changed, because I think just living it, I think it has changed a lot. If I think of our agency, MNC Saatchi Abel, I think one of the pillars we've built the agency on is called diversity of thought. And I think just, being in the creative industry, we know we can't just have one opinion. And that's not just, it's getting diverse people around a problem and getting different points of views and really embracing that. And ultimately what that has led and forced us to do, and we've done very intentionally, is to attract talent, young, diverse talent, female talent, Black talent into our industry, and to actually attract them, maintain them, grow them, and help them to bring us to these better points of view. Because ultimately, that is how we get to much better advertising, more powerful advertising, and more representative advertising. So I think absolutely it is shifting. Of course, we need to shift it quicker, but we are absolutely moving in the right direction. And I can say, just from my point of view, I think it's changed a lot.
You seeing it, which really makes us comfortable. It does, because we need that to happen. So I want to come back to a media side of things, and I want to get your sort of perspectives on this one, Devi, because this is a big story that I'm seeing it erupting more and more around the world. So as much as we're talking here in South Africa and Africa, but this is a global forum as well that we're talking to. And you and I are very lucky to be sitting here wearing dresses, open shoes, collars, whatever we want. If I want to wear pants, I can wear pants. If I want to go out looking like I want to go out, I can do that. But that doesn't happen elsewhere in the world.
No.
And this leads me to this Mahsa Amini story, where this young Iranian girl, 22 years old, goes into the city center in Iran and is apparently not dressed well enough, according to the Dignity Police. And they then arrest her, they apprehend her, they take her into a prison or a jail, and something happens there, but she's dead. So because the dignity police did not like what she was wearing, that they didn't feel like she'd covered herself enough or that wasn't tied enough, she's now dead. And they released video footage. This is from the media perspective. They released video footage to the media showing the footage of what happened to her while she was there. And they said, we took such good care of her. We don't know what happened. She must have had an existing heart condition. She just died. It's not our fault. It's her fault. Whereas we all can see that something went wrong. The world is not accepting this. And this is where I'm going, is that as much as we're talking about it, and we may think we're just talking to ourselves, but we are not. There is a movement at the moment. I mean, after her death, over 200 people have died on streets around the world, protesting for equal rights for women and the way women can be seen and how women can dress and how women must be in these powerful positions as well. Mahsa Amani is a name we must never forget, because this, I think, is going to see a big change coming. I hope, I foresee it. People are tired of the way women are treated. Do you sense that in the world of media and where we are?
Yeah, totally. But it hasn't been a recent development, I think, for us. But taking that global perspective, which is what you're referring to, it's a tough one because you've got the politics of religion. We've had Malala, we know that.
Yeah.
We thought that was going to be the big change. I mean, it took for her to basically have her face shot at before she could leave her country, go to America, and get the opportunities. But, I mean, we don't want that to happen to people, where you get almost airlifted from one country to another, and it's not something that's available to everybody. We're on the agenda. We have always been on the agenda. But the question is, do we take that northern suburbs approach? You know, the bubble approach, like in South Africa, we're almost in a bubble. Because when we start talking about gender issues within South African boundaries, and then you ask a question like that, and you think like, whoa, hold on, guys. It's a whole other world across the pond. So how do we start also making an impact across our borders? You can only do this in small steps, small little steps. So I often get this, Leanne. People say, well, you're on television. You can make a difference. It's about what you put on. I'm sure you also get that. It's about ads and how you're placing the stereotypes and what you're changing. But I'm also going to issue a challenge to other women who are watching this right now. How can you, in your own world, start to make these little changes? Because it's not about people like us on television or somebody who's in advertising. It's about all of us. That's what we mean when we talk about the collective. You start changing things 1 centimeter at a time. So you start with 10 bricks, guys. The next time you look, it's an entire structure. So that, for me, is how we need to do this. Because how do I advocate in another country? How do I?
No.
You can't call up a government and say, hey, stop your nasty ways. All of this has to change now. It's a lot more complicated than that.
It certainly is. But it's something that we always need to keep on our radar.
True.
Because things change so fast. They do change so fast. And as much as we're fighting for the empowerment of women, which we are, and we do that, and for generations before us, they have done that, we can never keep our eye off the ball. Never. And that's something that we constantly need to strive for. Because I want to see my daughter being able to travel in an Uber late at night. At the moment, she can't. Obviously, she can't. She's 10 years old, and we're putting her in an Uber. But our safety is under threat. Women, the rate of rape and abuse here in this country, we actually can't wear what we want to wear, because you hear of women and the men's perspective, well, what did she expect? Because did you see what she was wearing?
That's exactly what we need to change,
and
right?
These are the kind of things that, yes, as much as that's happening there, we're fighting the biggest war here with crime against women.
I promise you, I thought about this the other day. This is one of the most dangerous places to live in the world if you're a woman.
Absolutely.
Fact, right? So I'm not going to argue the stats at all. I came back from India 2 weeks ago, and the poverty is there, is at a whole other level. But as a woman on my own, I could travel in a tuk-tuk late at night. How's that?
Wow.
How's that? Alone.
Yeah.
That blew my mind. Because I could walk on a street at night. No one's going to catcall me. I can do what I need to do. I have freedom of movement, which I don't have in my own country.
And that's what I'm talking about. The fight is still there. Ile, you were saying?
No, I think just to echo that sentiment and that point, I think we can We can talk about, how do we show in ads and the representation in media and all of that. But, ultimately, it is around the widespread prevalence of gender-based violence. That is what is putting us into a very unequal society. And I think the role of women, because of that, it's actually not depicted in the right way. Women are the primary caregivers most of the time. We know how many people grow up with absent fathers and not father figures in their lives, where women are taking on they're the backbone of society, but that's not always reflected in the media. And I think until we start addressing that, and it's a systemic issue, until that systemic issue is being addressed and corrected, that for me is a much bigger thing that we have to address at its core. And from there we can only get better, but it is something we have to address, absolutely.
Yeah. Gosh, I've loved this. Can you believe we've been going?
No.
Yeah,
I mean, we're nearly done.
No, we're nearly done. I mean, look at the time. It's ridiculous, but it's just such a big conversation and such an important conversation to have. So I'm getting to this point. Eli, let me carry on with you, and perhaps you want to wrap it up for us on the. I mean, I've even lost the topic somewhere along the line. It's been that wonderful.
That's how you know it's a great conversation.
Yeah, where the topic
That's
is
how
just,
you know.
It's disappeared. Driving the women empowerment narrative, media and brands. That's what we, I suppose, are talking about. But we've traveled so much, and because there is so much in this conversation. It's not as simple as saying, we mustn't sell cars by putting naked women on the bonnets anymore. It's deeper than that. People are cleverer than that. It's, in the days gone by, and I talk about advertising, that was so blatant. It was so in your face. At the moment, it's not in your face. It is the 10-gram difference on the paddle tennis racket that is there, and it's holding on to it. But we need to realize that these things have got to go. We've done well, but we've got to do better. So let me let you just give us your closing remarks, Ile. What do you have to say?
Yes, I think for me it comes down to two things. I think if this chat's obviously been about media as quite a broad sense. So there's media in terms of the news cycle, there's social media, but then also there's ads and advertising. And I think they all play such a huge role in how we are depicting women. If I can just use two quick examples, I guess more from a news cycle point of view, and how the media have depicted women. So let's take Sanna Marin, who's the Prime Minister of Finland. I think we all know what happened there. She was called out for a video that was leaked of her living a normal life, having some fun with her girlfriends, and she was being called out for that and received some backlash for that. And I think the fact that that happens in 2022 to a female leader who is living a normal life is a problem. But then equally, we've seen with Jacinda Ardern, from Prime Minister from New Zealand, how she has led with such authenticity and is pushing into and not shying away from being a working mom, and how the media have portrayed that in such a positive light. And I think that just shows the power of the media and the influence and the reach of the media that we need to be aware of, that we can affect that change. All of us collectively can affect that change. And I think just linking it back to my world in terms of brands and advertising, we also know we have the great opportunity with all these media messages that we are bombarding people with every single day to change that narrative one step at a time. And I think it's being done through challenging the status quo with brave campaigns that brands are getting behind, by being authentic brands, but being brave and not, like I said, tone deaf. Just to mention one last campaign, I think there's such a great campaign from, it's called Change for Her, which is done by, it's an initiative from Newsroom Africa with Razor PR, where they are taking on government to change our coat of arms. Because why should our coat of arms have two men on it? Why can it not have one female and one male? And I think that's the kind of thinking we need to do more that will shift the dial. So I think, that's for me just the power of the media at the end of the day.
Indeed it is. Ile, thank you very, very much for that. Devi, wrap it up. Give us your closing marks.
We can all do more, right? That's the one thing we accept. As a media, I can start showing even more powerful women, put them on there. We've got that. You, in the same way, in terms of advertising, same story, right? We could change the narrative. But I want to issue a challenge. It all starts on the home, guys. How do we raise our children? What are we saying to our little girls? What are we saying to our little boys? This is not the kind of issue you're going to flick like that. It will never happen. But what can happen is we can start to normalize what should be normal from home. That's my challenge. We all need to do it.
Yeah, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. It is about what we do at home, behind those closed doors, how we raise our children, how we raise our boys and our girls, because that at the end of the day is it. There's nothing worse for me than I'm watching my child on a sports field or playing tennis and he hits the ball and it's not that hard and his coach says, stop hitting like a girl.
Yeah.
it's things like that that you and I need to stop. I stopped the coach immediately and I said, don't you dare say that. Don't you dare say that. He wishes he could hit like Serena Williams.
Good one.
I love you guys. Thank you for being with us. It really has been such a wonderful panel. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember, write to us on social media. Use those hashtags. Do what you have to, comment, and you can get in the conversation as well. Devi, thank you. Always a pleasure seeing you.
Lovely to see you both.
Yeah, get better with that voice of yours. Ile, thank you very much. Sorry you weren't here with us, but we loved having you and your insights.
Great chat. Thanks so much, Leanne.
All right, we're going to take a look at a case study now. And this is a case study where the gender lens investing at the center of economic transformation. And this is going to be delivered by Josephine Tsela. She's the Chief Risk Officer at the IDC.
Good day, ladies. Very happy to be here with you and very appreciative of the opportunity. So, as you know, I am the Chief Risk Officer of the Industrial Development Corporation. The IDC has a very long history. We are an over 80-year-old institution, and our mandate over this period has been to be proactive in maximizing development and also very committed in terms of altering the ownership structure of our economy. And this also talks to ensuring that we have more female entrepreneurs, female business owners than has been the case historically. So I'm going to share with you now just some of the areas that I think would be of interest to yourselves from a funding perspective, what to look out for or what we look at when we are analyzing a business that comes through for funding. And hopefully some of these tips, maybe you are already applying or some of them can help you in terms of taking your business from where it is, or if you want to start and taking it forward to a different level. So from just a bit of statistics, from an IDC perspective, in the last financial year, we funded 1.2 billion of women businesses. That is still quite small when you look at the total funding that the IDC has actually extended into the economy. We are an institution that is very much passionate and focused on youth and women development. We have around us a lot of funding, funds that we are third-party funds that we implement on behalf of either government or other partners, but we also set aside for ourselves from our own balance sheet funds that we can then deploy to assist businesses to improve either their governance, to improve their marketing, to improve their understanding, or anything that needs, or the entrepreneurs themselves to improve themselves in terms of how they run their businesses. So one of the things that I have observed over time during my career as somebody that sits in most credit committees is that the businesses, the way that they are packaged, the applications that come through are not as strong as they ought to be. So the first thing, ladies, that you need to be very, very passionate about is that you understand the market that you're going to get yourself involved in. So putting together a good marketing analysis, doing a market research, and understanding who the competitors are, your entry into the market, how you intend to grow, that is the first step. So that the IDC has funds and can support you in terms of developing that marketing plan. What we also do at the IDC is, you often hear that, they want me to have done a funding model or, very complicated financial terms that I am not able to do. what we do at the IDC, we send in teams into your business, and they sit with the entrepreneur and they really start from the bottom, building up the business case upward. The one thing that I observe is that the forecast or the assumptions around how the business is going to work out are often far too optimistic. It's always either the turnaround or the revenue will grow very, very fast, or some of the hurdles that any business goes through are underestimated. So what I advise you as an entrepreneur, as a business owner to do is to really sit down with a team and be very, very transparent in terms of what you have learned and what you know and what can go wrong. Because as you do that, then they start to put in mitigating factors around the business. So what happens if such and such were to take place? And then they start to model that. And that then will allow us, when we go into a credit committee scenario, to be able to understand that this business has gone through, or this application has gone through rigor. And the owner of the business actually understands their market very, very well. And this is somebody that then we should partner because they understand their business. It doesn't mean that if you are new in a sector that we should not fund you. But that's where, as I said, the marketing side of the business that needs to come in. The second one is always that we don't have equity. All these financial institutions, including yourselves, IDC, are always asking us to put in equity, and we don't have enough. Why do we ask for entrepreneurs to put in something? It's really a commitment to show that you yourself, as an entrepreneur, are willing to lose something. We always call it skin in the game. You put in the skin in the game, which means you are committed to this business to make sure that it succeeds. So it's not just somebody applying somebody else's money and none of their own. Of course, as an entrepreneur, your time is very important. You're putting in your sweat capital in there, but the financial element of it doesn't have to be large, but it has to be large enough for you, for us to see that you are really committed to see this through. That gives us comfort to partner you and gives us, everybody else, comfort to partner you as we move forward. The other thing that I see is the team that you have around you. You have to have a very diverse, what I mean by diverse, skills around you. Your accounting side, your marketing side, marketing and sales side, it needs to be strong. Your technical people need to be strong. Depending on the business that you're involved in, so that you can rely on, being the driver of the vision for the business, and that you don't always have to be all things to everybody. We do get concerned when you are spreading yourself too thin and you are the only person that is doing absolutely everything. That normally says that you will not have enough. There's only 24 hours in a day. You might not have enough hours to be focusing on the right things, and you're always putting out fires. And in our experience, this is one of the pitfalls that we find, is that people are spread too thin and they are doing too many things. So when you build in your funding model, do build in this kind of costs of getting people to support you that are qualified to support you. That you should not run away from and say, I'm waiting for the business to survive. Because if the business case is solid and if it is strong enough, then it should be able to support, to fund, or be able to afford some kind of support for yourselves. The other last point that I would really recommend that you look at is that as a startup or as a medium-sized business, it's not by law required that you have audited financials, but largely it is very important for you to start on the right footing. So for audited financials, which the IDC, we can provide funding for you to be able to do this, to bring in partners, to build in and get your financials audited at a very early stage, so that we don't have to be asking ourselves whether the financials, there is a level of integrity that is in the financials or not, because with auditors, there's a level of comfort that financial institutions place towards those. And so lady entrepreneurs should, I would say, focus on this particular one as one of the key areas of having audited financials, and we can support you with that. And finally, really, it is really enjoy what you do. Go into this. It's a long-term commitment. As I said, the IDC, we're all about the youth. We're all about the women. We're all about turning this economy around and making sure that employment happens. And it is people like yourselves, entrepreneurs like yourselves, not us who may be sitting with money, that can turn the South African economy around. We need yourselves to partner with us and make sure that the businesses are sustainable. What we are very, very passionate about in terms of that sustainability is that your business does not have a 2-year or 5-year or 10-year lifespan, but has a very, very long-term lifespan so that you can grow into a very big business, and that we can start exporting, going into other continents where we can also partner you with, and you can grow into a standalone business to be reckoned with. With that said, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity that you have afforded me, and I hope you enjoy this conference, that you have, and that you come out with it, really empowered ladies, and that the conversations that we are starting or continue to start year after year continue to take place. And the IDC, we say our doors are always open, and you'll be talking to colleagues here, and you can take names and call us and contact us and make sure that we can partner you to make lives better for lady entrepreneurs, for women entrepreneurs. Thank you very much.
At the IDC, we're invested in our common purpose to drive our development mandate and advance the South African economy. We celebrate the moments that build us, the achievements that motivate us, the funding solutions that birth businesses, the communities that progress. We're invested in our people, each one a contributing voice and skill. We're invested in our clients, whose businesses we help grow. We're invested in economic progress. We're invested in empowerment. We're invested in transformation.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Great to be with you. And as you can see, I've had a bit of an outfit change. So now I'm back on the virtual set. So as you can tell, this is me in black, and apparently everything works, but my yellow dress wasn't working. So here we go. That's the joy when you're doing these. And that's why I emphasize I am so glad that we're going to live next year, that we can all be together. It doesn't matter what color we wear. It really doesn't. But anyway, nice to be with you. I feel like I'm hosting like the Miss South Africa pageant, because I've got to have outfit changes. And by the way, we're going to be chatting to the Miss South Africa a bit later. So I perhaps just changed a bit earlier. But yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting her. Let's get into our next panel now. So this one is all about women empowerment principles, a practical, efficient, sustainable way for resilient recovery after COVID-19. And quite an important topic it is, because, the women empowerment principles are basically a set of principles offering guidance to business on how to promote gender equality and women's empowerment in the workplace, marketplace, and the community. Established by the UN Global Compact and UN Women and WEPs, they're informed by the international labor and human rights standards and grounded in the recognition that businesses have a stake in and a responsibility for gender equality and women's empowerment. I know it's quite a mouthful, but it's a very important document and a very important principle as well. Now, this panel, we're going to try and discuss the WEPEs as a primary vehicle for corporate delivery on gender equality dimensions of the 2030 Agenda and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Let me introduce my panelists that are going to participate in this particular discussion. Quite a few panelists, so we're going to get lots of perspectives and lots of voices. First up, we've got Jeanette England, who is the Group Executive for Risk and Sustainability from Aspen Pharmacare. Jeanette, nice to have you. Welcome. Our next panelist is Lauren Orotta, who's the Vice President of Group Environmental, Social and Governance from Imperial. Lauren, good day to you. All right, doesn't seem like our panelists can hear us. And then, of course, there's Jabulile Kubeka, who's Africa Talent Leader at Ernst & Young. I'm going to keep saying your names until I find someone who can hear me. Jabulile, can you hear me? All right, also struggling with Jabulile. Malcolm Larson,
yes.
Business Engage. Malcolm, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yay, I've got one person who can hear me. This is a good thing. At least we've got a starting point. And then we've got Naledzani Mosomane, who's the Head of Enterprise Development at Standard Bank. Naledzani, can you hear me?
Yes, very loud and clear, Leanne.
Fantastic, I'm so glad. Let me try my other panelists again. Jeanette, Lauren, Jabulile, can you hear us?
We can hear you now.
Yes.
Yay! Fantastic. I've got you all. I'm so glad. Welcome, everybody. Good to have you. And thanks so much for participating in this particular panel. So, all right. Let me get, I'm going to start off with you, Naledzani, because I know that you, at least I 100% can hear. But the question I want to ask you is all around the women's empowerment principles. Now, they were established by the United Nations Global Compact and UN Women in 2010. So I think what we can do is perhaps start off by talking about these principles and what their actual purpose is.
Thank you so much, Leanne, and good morning to everyone and to the amazing women that have joined the conference. It really is a pleasure for me to be part of this panel. So the UN has created 7 key principles which really focus on the empowerment of women across organizations, whether you are leading an organization or you are running your own business as a woman entrepreneur. They really focus on supporting women, ensuring that women are empowered so that they can do what it is that they need to do within the different roles that they occupy in the different industries in which they operate in. And they provide practical guidance on how to implement these principles in the different environments that we operate in.
And no doubt, very important. This is a vital thing. And I mean, when we look at the WEPs, they are set to be a primary vehicle for corporate delivery at the end of the day. That's what they're really all about, on gender equality dimensions of the 2030 Agenda and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. What are the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? Let's remind everybody about that. And I mean, 2030 is not a far way away, and there's great fears that we're not going to reach that time.
I think if I could answer that,
please.
Yeah, the goals set out for 2030, there's 17 goals in total, and the Women Empowerment Principle covers goal number 5 around gender equality. So WEPS fits into those sustainability goals, which covers things like peace and climate change and so like poverty, things that we are battling with as a society globally. There is, so like you mentioned that we're not going to meet those goals. I think there's no doubt about that now. But that does not mean to say that we should stop trying, and that the WEPS principles, which then fit into those the 2030 agenda, that should be seen in line with, and there's 7 of principles, which is, and the nice thing about the principles is they are very, very comprehensive and yet very, very simple. So they cover things really like from leadership, external interaction, with your stakeholders, what happens internally, but they are guidelines and they are best practices, and they should be seen in conjunction with what organizations are doing as well. So they should fit in rather than be standalone.
Yeah. Okay. So it's nice that we had the whole sort of perspective of what we're looking at, the WEPs as well as these goals that we need to get, okay? But now I want to talk about the COVID-19 pandemic and the unfortunate situation where obviously this kept us back a little bit, and that's the reality, is that we've lost time. We have. It caused much devastation in terms of economic and social damage. Let's see, how could the WEPs offer a vehicle of aid for resilient recovery after COVID-19? Perhaps I can come, Jeanette, I'm going to ask sort of everybody's view on this one, but Jeanette, if you would like to begin, let's make that a good starting point for the discussion now.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to join you today. So I think COVID-19, as you've rightly mentioned, had a devastating effect. But at the same time, I think it really galvanized and emphasized the interconnectedness of the world, and how we really need to pull together in times of crisis, and that we can do it. I think there were some, amongst the devastation, there were some amazing achievements through collaboration between nations, between private sector and governments, and so on. And I think we really ought to pull from that experience to really give more impetus to these global goals. And of course, in any time of crisis, the more vulnerable are impacted the most. And women agenda fits closely to that, because often it is the women in our communities and in our environments that really bear the brunt of some of these these events. So I think it's the WEPs really do, together with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, really provide an excellent framework for us all to commit, to moving forward after the devastation of COVID-19.
Yeah. Lauren, can I also ask the same of you? Perhaps maybe just to give us your views on that.
Yeah, well, really echoing a lot of what Jeanette has said, and morning, everyone. In fact, the UN released a fantastic report with very sobering statistics about COVID-19 and other crises, conflict as well, that have really, and how much it has taken us back on the 17 goals. I'm sure we've all read and seen for ourselves how particularly women have borne the brunt of the suffering, job losses, increases in gender-based violence, for example. And I think the spotlight that Jeanette spoke about being highlighted, I think more so on social matters, have really come to the fore, and the gap in addressing social issues, whereas I think a little bit before that, environment was at the fore. So I think it really highlighted the need to focus on social development objectives, and particularly through SDG 5, which is gender equality. The WEPs really help guide on how do we bring women and their male counterparts in the workplace, how do we bring everyone better for the benefit of society?
Yeah, and that's, that of course is the core of everything at the moment. It really is, but it's just been a very, very difficult time, and it still continues to be a very difficult time as people try to rebuild, economies try to rebuild, and yet economies are taking a strain, and it doesn't matter which country you're in the world right now. It is a very, very difficult time for everybody after this, and COVID has really been a very difficult moment in history that we need to get over. But I just on a final comment on this, Jabulile, I want to bring you into the conversation, and I also haven't had the chance to hear from you either. Jabulile, just give us your views on this particular issue.
Thank you, Leanne, and I would echo my fellow panelists' point about the fact that females are disproportionately affected by crises, any crisis for that matter. And what I like about the women empowerment principles is that they not only help organizations look internally into what they need to do to ensure that there is gender equity in their organizations, but they also help us also embrace our responsibilities in the communities in which we operate in. Because really it is it should be a license to operate for all of us as corporates to ensure that we extend, beyond our own internal focus, as it relates to gender equity and just social equity as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at the principles, and that's the reality. The principles of the WEP, the actual principles. Do they offer guidance to business on how to promote equality and women's empowerment in the workplace, the marketplace, and the community? Naledzane, let me give this to you, because I think this is an important aspect from the business world and from Standard Bank. Perhaps you can give us a good starting point on that.
Thanks, Leanne. So in my view, the women empowerment principles really provide a practical guide on key items to focus on when it comes to both women empowerment as well as the development of women. And I think we know that it's crucial if we want to build sustainable economies that enable true economic development. We need to make sure that we are addressing these principles. For me, in terms of what I do on a daily basis, I would say Principle 5, which focuses on implementing enterprise development, supply chain, and marketing principles, is what really resonates with me. And I think I can stand here and proudly say that as a bank, we've really been deliberate in ensuring that we develop key initiatives that aim to practically implement this particular principle. Since 2021, we've created key development programs as well as funding solutions which aim to enable the development, the sustainability, and the growth of women-owned enterprises across multiple sectors and industries. And just to name a few of the initiatives that we've been driving within Standard Bank, which really focus particularly on women development and women empowerment, is we have our Basadi Development Program, where we've taken 100 businesses through a 12-month program where we've given them access to skills, access to resources, and access to funding so that they can really rise above the noise and be able to gain the confidence to be able to run their businesses sustainably. We also have our Sebenza Mbokodo program, which really focuses on township enterprises. We've been focusing on formalizing those enterprises so that they can get access to opportunities, which we know that a lot of these women-owned enterprises do not get access to. And we've also been able to assist with funding. So from a bank perspective, I think the principles are key. They're a great guide in terms of how do we support the development of women and how do we become deliberate in supporting the development of women as well.
So, Malcolm, I mean, you hear a practical example of how a corporate like Standard Bank, a big bank here in South Africa, are trying to adapt these principles. Does this sound like obviously the way that it should be? Is that what it's aimed for? Is that how it should be working? But in principle and in reality, is it working? Let's get your views. Okay,
I think what's quite interesting is that South Africa is very unique when it comes to UN Women and the women empowerment principles, because South Africa is the only country globally that has a community of practice that has been set up in South Africa, where all of the signatories to the WEP's principles get together as a community, share and collaborate. So, what Standard Bank get right from their point of view, they can share and they can, get their best practices and they can share it with the rest of, the organisations within South Africa. Now, obviously, something like Standard Bank has competitors, like the other banks. But at a certain level, we've got to look at it from a country point of view. What's best for South African business? What's best for South African society? So if we get that community of practice, which has been going for around about 13 months now, and UN Women are looking at how this is rolling out and what the benefits are to be able to roll it out elsewhere in the world. So it's everybody joining together and collaborating. And I think that's what's making the, sort of a big difference. As I say, what Standard Bank, do well, they can share. What they're not getting right, then they can go to other people and get that information from them and collaborate.
Yeah, I mean, Jeanette, from your perspective and from the pharma healthcare, I mean, Aspen Pharmacare, it really has been one of those companies that was the forefront of everything, and that helped and assisted a lot when it came to the COVID-19 pandemic, talking about vaccines and all of those things. I don't even want to go back there, because it still is and was a very, very tough time. But when we look at the guidance that's offered to businesses and the promotion of women and the empowerment and the hiring of skills, and particularly within the perhaps the sciences and the areas that you specialize in, how is that going? In industries and the skills, do we have these skills that we talk to?
So I think you have raised a challenge. There are certain areas of skills that are the talent pool, and the coming out of schools and universities, the so-called STEM subjects, etc., are not that yet where it should be in terms of an equal talent pool coming through the universities and so on. And so we do have to take specific measures to ensure that we support young women in their high school career subject choices and in their career choices, so that we can build, for the whole of South Africa, a skills pool that has, in those more scientific and technical subjects, a more balanced representation. But Leanna, just from a very personal point of view, and I do go down to our factory every now and then in Grobega, and my heart is filled with immense pride when I see the number of women that are working in that very technical environment and are holding their own. And so I think we have come a long way. I think, of course, we always look into the future and what could we improve, and definitely in my space of work, I'm always looking at what could we do more. But I think sometimes it is good to sit back and reflect on what we have achieved and how far we have come, and take some pride and some energy from that to take us forward to meet the challenges in the future.
Yeah, and that is something we need to be cognizant of, and obviously we need to look at and take seriously. As much as we're trying to emphasize empowerment, we're trying to emphasize growth of women, the skills, and that we can never ignore that. We cannot ignore that, and make sure that we are filling those important roles. So again, we want to get around, and Lauren, I want to come to you now as well. So Jeanette speaking about immense pride as she walks around, and also noticing that there is that skills shortage, and we need to encourage the young girls and the women that are studying to go into areas that are needed and that help develop the country. But I mean, let's talk from your perspective. It was a very different route altogether when we talk about Imperial. But how does it go from your side, and this exact question?
Yeah, so logistics, absolutely an industry which is renowned for a low participation rate of women. We've all seen big trucks on the road. How many of those are driven by women? In warehouses as well, forklift drivers, a notoriously male-oriented field. So we've put a lot of emphasis into trying to understand what are some of the hurdles that prevent women from participating in these kind of career choices, and we implement programs to try and overcome those. So I will give you an example with our drivers. We started a women's driving program where we employed unemployed women, qualified drivers, and have brought them into training programs and into our contracts with clients to meaningfully participate as drivers in our workforce. We have to take special precautions around health and safety, though. We have to develop those programs to understand on a long distance journey, truck stops, what can we do to improve safety? So until we solve some of those problems, we have to think about shorter distance routes to make sure that safety is in place. Same in the warehouse. One has to think about, is the personal protective equipment right? What do we have to adapt to make women comfortable and safe in the workplace? So we've got quite a lot of programs around that. As Jeanette said, equally training programs. We want women diesel mechanics. And so our apprenticeships are particularly geared to ensuring an equal split between men and women in the field. So very much part of the agenda.
Yeah, and an important part of the agenda. Jabulile, African talent leader, Ernst & Young, these aspects we've spoken about are, I imagine, some of the key obstacles in the successful implementation of the WEPs. So this is just one of many, but let's talk about them. How do we overcome these obstacles? What are the things we can do? And I'll come to you, Jabulile, and then I'm going to go to Naledzani to answer the same question.
So Leanne, before I get to that question, I'd like to just make a point around the skills aspect and as it relates to women. So I think we all have a responsibility as corporates to actually ensure that we invest in the girl child from early childhood. I personally believe that with COVID, one of the areas that has been unduly affected by COVID is the public education sector. We saw how in the public sector, children were just not able to access quality education. And we have a role to play beyond COVID to ensure that we bridge the gap there, not only for the girl child, but for all children that are in the public sector. And one aspect or program that I'm particularly proud of that EY has implemented is what we call our Next Gen program, where we really focus on access to quality education for the girl child, for those that come from previously disadvantaged communities and schools. Through partnership with the Department of Education, we identify those schools that really need differentiated support. And what we do is for those girls, we actually incubate them fully, because we understand that you cannot just ask a girl child to focus in class when they're hungry, right? They cannot focus in class when they are going back to a community that is riddled by gender-based violence. So it's a holistic program that ensures that the girl child really focuses on education. And we empower teachers also from those schools to focus on teaching, because we understand that the infrastructure that they operate in is really not conducive for teaching. So I think it's an important aspect that we all should rally around, and we know that we can achieve a lot if we put our forces together.
Yeah, I love that, and it is so important, and I mean, it is the reality is, you look at what had happened during COVID, and you know that there were kids that sat at home for 2 years. There were kids that have never returned to school since then, and we can never ignore that. And with that gap, we're in big trouble. We really are. And if we have to tally that up, I think the young girls included in that are probably the bulk of it, and that's where we've really got to worry. We've got to start wrapping up. Malcolm, Naledzani, I wanted to get a quick answer from you on that same question about the obstacles and the implementation. And we know what the problems are, but how do we get over them?
I'll touch quickly on some of the key obstacles that I think are prevalent in terms of successful implementation of the web. So I think there's a lack of understanding in terms of what are the challenges that many women-owned and women-led businesses face. I think there's a lack of understanding in terms of how do we practically implement these principles within the particular environment in which we operate within. And I think we also don't have the right individuals to drive implementation of these principles. So those are just some of the obstacles that I'm finding. And in terms of how do we overcome these obstacles, I think it's important to have more discussions such as these, which focus on the purpose of the principles, as well as the importance of the principles and the impact of implementing these principles. And I also think it's important to be deliberate as organizations and institutions in ensuring that we have a clear plan on how we implement the principles and start taking the necessary steps to ensure that we do implement these principles. And the last thing is what Malcolm touched on. I think collaboration across industries is really critical. And this includes identifying and sharing those best practices for successful implementation.
I'm going to give each of you a minute to wrap this up. Malcolm, I'm going to start with you. So please just sum this up for us. The recovery, the sustainability, all of these goals, the WEP, and moving forward, but for the better, particularly for women.
Yeah, I think the first thing is that, as we said, WEPs cannot be a standalone program. It's got to be part and parcel of what organisations are doing, so anyway. It's got to be mainstreamed within the organisation. It can't be, just hived off to a junior person to say, well, you look at this. It's got to be brought into by the CEOs. It's got to be brought in by the board. And to me, in my mind, it's very, very clear. There's three things that we must focus on. The first one is the importance of collaboration. The second one is the importance of collaboration. And the third one is the importance of collaboration. Otherwise, all we're doing is, we're all in our little silos trying to do our own little thing. And we waste time, we waste resources, and we need to do everything together. Thank you.
Love it. Malcolm, thank you. Jeanette, quickly wrap it for you, for your side.
Thank you so much. I think for me, and it's sort of the motto I apply to all our sustainability objectives, is we need to move from strategic intent to strategic action. And I think, it's easy to sign up to principles and commit and make commitments, but we really need to start showing the impact, the outcomes that we are achieving with these. And I think that is, for me, the principles provide that framework, but it's really the action around that we need to focus on. Lovely. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks very, very much, Jeanette. And thanks to you and the team for all you did for us during that time and working tirelessly to try and help and protect South Africans on the continent. So we do thank you for that. Lauren, final word from you?
Yeah, building on the comment Malcolm made around collaboration, I think two key stakeholder groups to include would be your customers and suppliers, and see if you can leverage their skills, their skills, their finances and efforts to work together jointly on implementation. So it's idea sharing, but it's also the opportunity to work together in implementing solutions. And we found that is particularly successful where companies with mutual interests can collaborate. The second stakeholder group I want to point out is half of the male at least half of the male of the workforce is male. So we need male ambassadors every bit as much as women ambassadors on this journey. We need to be inclusive in promoting the gender equality objective, and that is to Malcolm's point, how you make it integrated into your business. It's not one half of the business caring about this. All of us, we need a big change management program to ensure it is something that everybody is on board with.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Thanks so much for being with us and for your valuable input. Jabulile, over to you.
For me, it's simple. I would say done is better than perfect. We should all be out there trying our best and moving forward. And I will borrow from Orotta, who said, I didn't get there by wishing for it or hoping for it. I got there by working for it. We roll our sleeves and we get to doing the work that is required to transform our businesses and our societies.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely love that. Great quote. And certainly it is the change that is needed from the inside. I keep on emphasizing that today because I feel that's, we need people that, like such as yourselves, that are inside that make that change. There's so much and no more we can do from the outside, but those inside can do big things. Naledzani, you got the last word. Wrap it up for us.
Thank you. So in my view, realistically, we won't be able as organizations to implement each and every single one of those principles. And I think we need to be realistic, look at those 7 principles and prioritize as an organization, what is it that you are practically able to implement as a starting point. And then I think there's no doubt in terms of the positive impacts that come through implementation. We know this will help create jobs. We know this will improve the sustainability of businesses. And we know that implementing also creates diverse leadership, which is critical in creating a sustainable organization. So for me, that's my closing. I think just be practical, be realistic in terms of what you can do, and just start as a starting point.
Exactly. Just start. Just start. That's kind of the best advice we can get. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. It's been wonderful having you. Have a fantastic day, and thanks so much for participating in this panel discussion.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I've got such a special guest that I'm really looking forward to chatting to in a couple of minutes' time. It's our acting public protector. She will be my guest up next, but we need some music before that, so enjoy as we get ready for that discussion.
At first I was afraid, I was petrified, kept thinking I could never live without you by my side. But I spent all so many nights thinking how you did me wrong, but I grew strong. And I learned how to get along with turn your back from outer space. I just work here to find you here, but that's how I look upon your face. I should have changed that stupid life. I should have made you leave your keys. If I had known for just 1 second, you'll be back to bother me. Oh, and I go, walk out the door, just turn around now, 'cause you're not welcome anymore. Were you the one that tried to break me with goodbyes? You think I'll crumble? You think I'll lay down and die? I'm not gonna give up, I'm not gonna stop, I'm gonna work harder, I'm a survivor, I'm gonna make it, I will survive, keep on surviving. Thought I couldn't breathe without you, I'm inhaling. Thought I couldn't see without your perfect vision. Thought I couldn't last without you, but I'm lasting. Thought that I would die without you, but I'm living. Thought that I would fail without you, but I'm on top. Thought it would be over by now, but it won't stop. Thought that I would self-destruct, but I'm still here. Even in my years to come, I'm still gonna be here. I'm a survivor, I'm not gonna give up, I'm not gonna stop, I'm gonna work harder. I'm a survivor, I'm gonna make it, I will survive, keep on surviving. Oh, I will survive. Oh, as long as I know how to live, I know I'll still alive. I got all my love to live, and I got all my love to give, and I will survive. I will survive. I'm a survivor. I'm not gonna give up. I'm not gonna stop. I'm gonna work harder. I'm a survivor. I'm gonna make it. I will survive. Keep on surviving. I'm a survivor.
All right, welcome back. And it is so nice to be with my next guest. I have to say, I've never actually physically met her. In fact, these days you physically hardly meet anybody. You maybe speak to them virtually, but to be seated next to somebody that you have spoken about on many occasions, heard about, read about, and in some instances almost felt sorry for, and they're sitting next to you. It's so nice to be with her, and I'm sure I can feel her smiling as I said, feel sorry for, because I know what it is like, and when you're in a position such as the acting public protector's position, it's not the easiest place to be. Please welcome my next guest, Advocate Koleka Taleka, who's going to be talking about the way forward for legislative gender diversity. So nice to be with you and meet you properly.
Thank you, Leanne.
Yeah.
It's so good to meet you, and it's so good to be participating in this phenomenal and really historic event of top women at Standard Bank.
You know, coming together, talking about issues that affect all women is it's very important, and we having such a wide range of it, and it's been so interesting to hear that it doesn't matter which industry you're in, where you come from. Yes, there have been strides. Yes, we're doing well, and yes, we're banging down doors and smashing glass ceilings, but we haven't quite broken that glass yet. It's still there, it's still hard. It's almost bulletproof to a way, so we've got to push even harder. What is it like for you? I mean, in your industry, because this is a tough industry. You don't play in your industry. How's it been for you as public protector, acting public protector?
It's been, I normally say it's been hectic, but it's been fruitful, you know. I grew up in the legal fraternity. I started off as a prosecutor, you know, and most recently, about just over 2 years ago, I joined the Office of the Public Protector. Now, the legal fraternity is a highly masculine industry. I find it a little bit milder in the ombudsmanship, you know. And growing up, especially as a young girl, I normally say it starts with our orientation, our culture, our religion. We used to the pinks, the yellows, the sweet colors. And when you get into court and when you get into this masculine world, you need to be in black.
Yeah.
And for us, it's not what we've been orientated about. And it's amazing how color has an impact in that psychological confidence that it mostly creates for men within this industry. So that's where it starts for us. And fortunately, I come from a family where my mother really was not bound by the boundaries around gender. I've got 4 brothers, we're only 2 sisters. So we literally grew up, there was really no definition for us, and that really assisted me in maneuvering in the legal fraternity, but most importantly, in the position that I'm holding currently, leading an institution that's not just an ombudsman institution, but a high legal chartered institution within our country. So it does help to have that cultural background where there is no barriers, and the family background where there is no barriers. So it assists me not to have any barriers within my work environment.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never really thought of the color thing, because it is a big deal. I mean, when you walk into a courtroom, there is nothing glamorous about a courtroom. It is cutthroat. You are surrounded by men. Because, I mean, you know, one of the amazing things that has happened in the world and in South Africa, and I think we can attribute that to a lot here in South Africa, was during that Oscar Pistorius trial, where it was suddenly all the attention on that trial, and you could get an inside glimpse into a courtroom and see the operation, see how it worked, see the inside workings of the system. And it is hard. It is
tough.
Very tough. You know, it's not, I don't think I could handle it. I must be honest with you. It's not something that I could do on a daily basis. I think I take it too personally. How do you do it? I mean, how do you sort of put that objective face on and go out there and do it?
I think generally as lawyers, we are trained on prescripts. So as a human being, especially as a lawyer, you learn to remove yourself as a person and adjust yourself into the prescripts. However, your character does come into play, and it is very critical, because this is a fraternity highly which is charged by ethics and integrity. So it is the manner in which you carry out those prescripts. So it is important that even you as a persona, it should be adjustable or likely to the role that you are playing, of the position that you are holding and the work that you are doing.
How do you remove yourself, though? And that's something that I've battled with. And we're going to get to the topic in a short while, the gender diversity. But I think it's an important conversation to have, because, You know, there's always been this criticism, especially of late, where we talk to a biased judiciary, a captured judiciary. You hear this all. You know this.
Yes.
I'm not telling you anything new. But I want to understand the inner workings of somebody like you that is in a very powerful position as the acting public protector and in the legal fraternity where, you know, it is hard not to have emotions towards somebody and to not think, well, you know, okay, so you haven't been proven guilty, but, you know, that is just, the emotions.
Yes.
How? I mean, let's talk about that. How do you not involve yourself in that story?
Leanne, the self needs to be characterized by character and the values that encompass you as a human being. But most importantly, the self, especially in the training that we've received, needs to be within those prescripts. So that's how we are trained. And I don't want to say it happens automatically, you know, but I think it does, you know, because you don't just take a matter in line with the person, but you need to take it within the circumstances in which you find that matter. But most of the matters that we deal with are beyond the person. They're mostly about the country, and you look at the system within which that operates. So it's always important to go beyond the person and go beyond what you feel as well as a person. But I think the most critical thing is that you need to always remind yourself what principles or values that you carry as that person. And for us in our field, always it's the constitutional principles, and that is what you constantly need to remind yourself.
Yeah. Some people criticize our justice system saying it moves too slowly. And it is. It's frustrating. We know that. I mean, you look at it and say, and you do, even the president has been quoted as saying, the wheels of justice must turn, but they do turn slowly. And it gets frustrating. And then it angers people. And, you know, the position that you find yourself in is a very difficult one. You know, especially being in an acting capacity with what is happening with the public protector, who's now no longer the public protector, but you have come into a lot of criticism yourself. And it must be hard to pick yourself up on a daily basis and say, I'm still going to do this, because at the end of the day, my job is the public protector. I work for the public, but at the same time, I'm being criticized by a certain faction within the public. That must be hard for you.
You know, it is a difficult situation, but what makes me to find solace in that is I've surrounded myself with the team at the office. And I've surrounded myself and actually almost abided by the policies that we have and the standards of operation procedures. And again, it goes to the prescripts, aligning yourself with the prescripts. So even if people can criticize me as much as they can, but and if you've noticed, in most of the responses that I give, I go straight to what the law says. These are the prescripts. These are the standard of operations within our environment. But also then you've got the team that builds up your confidence because they know the process and the procedures through which each and every decision has come through. So it's important indeed that the decision doesn't just come from me as a person, but the decision is subjected to a process and a procedure.
Yeah. And, you know, I get to now talking about, you know, the whole gender diversity and the legislative gender diversity, because what's so people perhaps forget sometimes is that the Public Protector's Office is not just there to investigate the president. Because I think it happened that, you know, one of the most prominent cases, obviously, was the whole issue around state capture, which was your predecessor, Thuli Madonsela, Advocate Thuli Madonsela, and that was, you know, where all of a sudden, you know, yes, we'd known about the Public Protector, but this was the moment that all of a sudden was the Public Protector. Now, of course, it's the whole Phala Phala issue. And before that was a whole bunch of other things, but the Public Protector, and I don't want to get into that stuff because that's not what this interview is about, but the important thing is the complaints that you get from the public to look into. These are important, and we tend to ignore these because this is the important aspect of the Public Protector, is defending South Africans. and the day-to-day plight of South Africans, not the high-profile cases, which we await on and we need desperately, but it's also those other cases that are the heartbeat of the country. So when we look at the issues that women are going through and the justice for women, and we all know it seems to not be good enough for that. Talk about some of those cases that you get passing by your desk in the office and how we try as hard as we can to help women when it comes to the legislative law and protect women.
Now, Leanne, the interesting thing is the public protector doesn't only protect South Africans, it protects members of the public, whether they're South Africans or not, as long as they've been failed by the system and there's have been any malfeasance against them by the system. Now, in terms of the legislative, ours is to ensure that there's accountability, to ensure that there's transparency, and to ensure that every action is in line with the Constitution. It's in line with the legislative prescripts within which public officials and the state organs need to function. Now, interestingly, I received this invite and this topic when we are currently busy with a systemic investigation looking into the system through which gender-based violence matters go through. Now, this was inspired by a matter that we received, having been forwarded to us by the Deputy Minister of Justice, of a lady at Bergville in Cape Town who had gone to apply for a protection order, however, did not follow it through, and the following day she was killed by her boyfriend.
Sure.
Now, the issue here was whether, is it the system, is it the law, what had failed her? We found that she was effectively assisted. However, the system is not efficient for victims of gender-based violence. So we are busy with that investigation, but in the meantime, I can just share that we need to have a friendly system. We need to have a system that's beyond the law, because the law is very rigid. And here we are dealing with human beings who at least need to find a system, yes, supported by the law, but that their psychosocial being can be adjusted to. But a system that's compliant to the prescripts that govern that particular system. The legislation framework is there, Leanne, and really I do not think that we should go any further in amending the legislation, because to amend the legislation takes about 3, 4 to 5 years, but again the implementation of that legislation takes another 10 years.
Yes.
And in implementing that legislation, you need to train and build capacity and skills, which takes another 5 years. So which means that to effectively put the law in place would take about 20 years. Now, if you are constantly reviewing, it means you would never be able to effectively monitor and evaluate the impact of the legislation at hand. And therefore, it does create a problem in terms of issues of resources, firstly, but effectiveness of the legislation and the deterrence which we trust the legislation to bring about if we keep on swapping and changing all the time. But for us, really, what we are looking at is the system. This is where we think the challenge is mostly. It is with the system and not necessarily with the legislations that we have in place. South Africa is regarded as one of the countries which are very progressive in terms of legislation.
Yeah, and it is true. I mean, when you look at us on paper, it's phenomenal. When you look at our constitution, it's amazing. When you look at everything, but it's the implementation that's a problem. It's the messaging that's a problem. It is the leadership that's a problem. And I keep on bringing up an example. I mean, when we have a police minister who basically, stands up after that horrific incident happened in Krugersdorp with the rape of all those young girls on that set of a music video, and the police minister, and I know. I imagine he didn't mean it in that way, but to even just echo the words and saying she was lucky she was only raped once. These are the kind of things where, you think, no, this can't happen. You cannot arrive at a police station and the person on duty tells you to go home and sort it out with your husband or boyfriend or whoever. Don't come here. We don't get involved in these kind of things. And then, this is what we're faced with on a daily basis. And then it does get into court. and nothing ever happens. And then this person carries on and on committing this violation until the woman is dead, or the girlfriend is dead, or the partner is dead. And that's what's left behind. So what, I mean, if you had to rectify, and if we have to look at those, I mean, I'm going to wrap up with you because I've already stolen already 3 minutes. I know I've only got 15 minutes with you, but I've already gone over. But if you had to implement within if I had to give you 3 things, 5 things if you want to, but I'm going to start at 3, that we could do straight away to help the women of this country and to change the life of the most vulnerable, that the state protects them. Because that for me is perhaps a good starting point to change that trajectory of women's future.
You know, Leanne, where it starts really, it's with the societal norms and conduct. You've just illustrated how the minister reacted into this. It's a societal norm and conduct. And what society doesn't understand, that it doesn't matter how many times a woman has been raped or violated, the impact is the same. It depends on the persona. It might even be worse for the one who's been raped once, you know. So that is where we need to start. We need to change the kind of society that we are having, because there shouldn't be an abuse in the very first place. Now, moving forward, it is the system. But I always say, and maybe it's because of the environment in which I'm at, for as long as we have maladministration, for as long as we have a decay in governance, for as long as we have corruption increasing, we are not going to have the resources to capacitate our societies and our communities, have sufficient recreation, ensure that everybody is at school, and further that we strengthen our systems and we provide the necessary support for the family first as the root of society, because that is where the cause starts. And then we move over to our systems. If we do not have resources to give the hawks or the necessary police enforcement who deal with these kind of matters sufficient resources, sufficient capacity, and build those capacities, we will not be able to deter any of the violations or the discriminations against women. But moving further than that, we need to capacitate women so that women are economically viable. They are confident enough to stand on their own side within society. But if there's insufficient opportunities and resources for them to do that, then they become more vulnerable into abuses. They live within these abuses because they need to get maintenance for themselves. There needs to be maintenance for the children. Because beyond, especially in the domestic violence matters, beyond the physical abuse, there's the financial abuse, there's the economical abuse, there's the cultural abuse. Yeah. So all those need transformation. But in order for us to achieve that as a country, we need an ethical leadership.
And that is the bottom line. Ethical leadership in all dimensions and aspects of life, in the family, in government, in a corporate, in a school, you name it, we need that. What a pleasure chatting to you. So nice to meet you.
Thank you.
And so nice to feel that gentle spirit coming through. And you know, the one thing I picked up from my conversation with Devi a bit earlier was, you know, she says she runs after crooks in high heels and a dress, and she's never going to change that, because that's who she is. And you are soft and gentle, but I can imagine inside there has to be a woman of steel to do what you do. Keep it up.
Thank you very much.
Keep it up. It's wonderful to have met you. An absolute pleasure. That's our acting public protector talking to us here on this awesome conference, where it's been a crazy busy morning, but a good morning, and I hope you've enjoyed it so far. There's so much interesting content that's coming out from our phenomenal guests that we have, and that's going to continue through the afternoon as well. All right, if you missed yesterday, here's a highlights package for you. And after this, we got some comedy for you. So here we go. Take a look at what happened yesterday.